I would always teach people that the surest road to success was moving out of your head and into your heart. The heart always sees what's good and how we can connect and how we're like each other and sees the truth. So I would always tell people when they're making decisions to move from their head physically to their heart.
Hello, welcome to Leading with Purpose. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with the legendary Debra Poneman, a true pioneer in transformational leadership and personal development. Also a dear friend, mentor, and I'm so excited for this call. For over the last 4 decades, Debra has been at the forefront of success and spirituality. Mentoring some of the most well-known thought leaders in the industry, she founded Yes to Success in the 1980s, helping thousands achieve wealth, impact, and recognition. But she realized that true success is not just about outer achievements, but about aligning your life with your inner truth. And that revelation led her to create the Awake Method, a profound new approach to leadership and life transformation. Debra is a gift to the world, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation. Hello, Debra.
It's so sweet that you said I was a mentor to you because you are a mentor to me. So I guess we're co-mentors.
Absolutely.
And thank you for inviting me.
I'm so happy to have you here. And, you know, our story is, to me, very unique and special. It was in 2019 that we were connecting through Facebook Messenger, and you didn't know my name. I invited you to come and speak at the Soulful Leadership Retreat. And you were in India. You're out on retreat and you're responding to these Facebook messages. And then when you told me that, I was like, well, why are you even talking to me? And you're like, well, this sounds great. And it was wonderful. And then so that was the beginning of it right there.
And what's so interesting about that is that you actually weren't inviting me to speak here, just inviting me to come to
You're right. That is true.
Right? And I get invitations like that all the time and random texts and random. But there was something about it. And I think that it was just that it was destiny. Because, again, I wouldn't normally respond. And I think because I was also at the ashram and in that energy where everything just flows and all these synchronicities happen. And that's when I happened to look at that text. And I'm like, I'm getting goosebumps now. It's like, I have to respond to this one. And then look, here we are 6 years later, and we're still together, and we still support each other. And I'm in your wonderful books and in MetaMind, and Renee and I worked together for all those years, and we're just friends for a lifetime. So it really is just a little hint to everybody. When something feels right, and I get these all the time, But listen to your intuition and follow your intuition, because it could lead you to something spectacular like it has for me knowing you all these years.
Oh, that is such a powerful message. Yes, trusting your own inner guidance is so powerful. And you have been this leader in the transformation industry in so many different ways, but especially blending the two pieces that I love around spirituality and business. And it's been very interesting in your past. But I'm curious for you, like what does leadership mean to you in this context?
Well, I will tell you that in 1 minute, but I will also say that these are the times where we need spirituality as a basis. And I always think of that quote from the hugging saint. People call her Amma. Her name's Amaji. And she made the statement, this is the time we must cling to our spiritual practices so that when the world shakes, we remain unshakable. And right now the world is really shaking. And yet when we have our spiritual practices, we're more able to tune into those synchronicities and not miss them. But I think leaders right now are so needed. And I believe that everybody is a leader. You're either a traditional leader, like, the owner of the top real estate agency in your region, or you're a teacher or a team leader at work. But if you're a mom or a dad, you are a leader because there are people who look to you for leadership. Or if you're a Little League coach or the president of the PTA, or you're a leader amongst your group of friends. Maybe you organize a meditation group or a neighborhood meetup, or people just tend to turn to you for knowledge and guidance and your opinion, which I just asked you before we got on this call. I remember when I was a little girl and a teacher asked us who we thought of. I must have been in second grade, who we thought of as the leaders in our lives. And I shot my hand up in the air and I said, the crossing guard, because to me, he was larger than life, with the stop sign, and he could stop traffic for us to cross safely across the busy corner of Howard and Crawford and Skokie, Illinois. I mean, in my mind, you don't get a bigger leader than that in my world. I remember his name. His name was Mac. But we need to own our leadership and move more fully into it right now, because the people who are drawn to listening to you, Mark, these are the people who have the qualities of a leader. And you need the same qualities to lead an international business as you do to lead a sports team.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that tapping in, because that's a key piece of yes to success, and even this awake method. It is about the inner and the outer parts being aligned.
Well, absolutely, and there are so many different ways. I mean, that's what I teach. I teach all of the different ways that we can walk our talk, and we could be aligned at this time, because we don't just affect ourselves and our families. We affect the world. Just like a pebble dropped into a pond, it ripples out to the very ends of that pond or that lake. And our actions don't just affect us, but they affect the world. So when we do something that's dishonest or out of integrity, or we tell a lie and we think that that's okay, it's not just affecting us, and it will affect us because of the boomerang effect, but it will also affect the rest of the world. So I believe that right now it is really important for every single one of us, and especially those people who are in your community, that every single one of us realizes that at any moment we have a choice. Should I take the credit when really it wasn't my idea, or should I give the credit to the person whose idea it was? Should I tell the expedient little untruth, or should I actually tell the truth? And even about the littlest thing, like, oh, sorry, I was late. The traffic was so bad. Yeah, and you left 15 minutes later than you should have, right? Or, oh, I was going to write that book, but I didn't write it because I thought, oh, there's so many people who have written books on leadership. Yeah, that, and your friend just made the New York Times list and you're not going to. So instead of being less than, I'm just not going to do it. So every moment we have to look and we have to tune into our intuition, say, what is the real reason I'm doing this? And by the way, I just thought of something else. Right now, the other thing that true leaders have to do is be humble. Just humbly go about their job and not need to tell people how great you are, because your actions speak so loud, words are unnecessary. In fact, if you need to tell people how great you are and tell them about all of your accomplishments and what an amazing job you're doing, all that gets accomplished is that it's a red flag that you absolutely don't think so. Humility is putting your ego in check and knowing you don't know everything. Humility, great leadership, is saying, I was wrong. I thought I was right, but actually I made a mistake. And then be open to learning. And you also don't want to lay on anybody kind of the extreme, oh, little old me, that kind of false humility, because that's very unattractive. And that comes from fear of owning your own power. So you do the false humility thing to protect yourself from having to be who you were put on earth to be. I say Stop pretending that you are anything less than great and powerful. Don't go around telling people, I'm so great, I'm so great. But the people you are meant to lead are waiting patiently for you to start leading. Their contract in this lifetime is to have their lives changed by you. And they're not going to wait for you to stop acting like, oh, little old me, I'm supposed to change the world. Yeah, you are given certain skills, talents, ideas by the Creator because the Creator needs you to use them to make this world a better place. I mean, the false humility is you protecting yourself in case you might fail. So you go around masquerading as somebody who isn't great to protect yourself. But news alert, there's no such thing as failure. It's just ways not to do a thing. Lesson learned. And failure in whose eyes anyway? Do you really care so much about what people think that you're willing to deprive the world of your gifts? I mean, imagine what you would do if you didn't care what other people think. And newsflash, again, they're not thinking about you. You're not that important to them. So stop wasting your time playing small. Personally, I don't want to hear from one more person. Little OP. The world is in a mess right now, and it needs the gifts you are given, needs the gifts that only you can bring. So give yourself permission to be who you were put on earth to be. We need you. And guess what? You might not have a New York Times bestseller or end up on the cover of Time. Like, who freaking who? You know, there are no guarantees in life. And the best-selling book isn't the point anyway. The point is, if you want to be a true leader, it's about modeling what you do on the way to the best-selling book, showing how leaders overcome obstacles on the way to their goals and have courage to move outside their comfort zone, accept challenges, and accept seeming failures with grace. That was a long answer to a short question that I don't even remember what it was.
Well, they brought up a whole bunch of other rich conversation because you were talking about a couple of things. One is that there's all different types of leadership. And so, yes, there's the big thing about getting your message out there. We really want to encourage everybody to do that. But just the way you're showing up as a parent or in your community, in your church, whatever that might be. But you talked about a couple of traits around leadership, one around integrity and then around humility. But you also talked about being unshakable. And especially in these times, like as leaders, we want to be able to be transparent. Like we can't fake it till we make it. We want it, but how can we be authentic and unshakable at the same time?
Oh my goodness. Well, one thing is you don't have to be right all the time. Okay. Well, one is you could say to somebody, I could see why you might feel that way. That's something you could do instead of just holding on because you think leaders have to be that way. No, true leaders are vulnerable in this day and age. I don't know, maybe back 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was a different type of leadership, but it's not that anymore. And if you want to be a great leader, don't give people answers. Ask them questions. What do you think? Well, what's your opinion about that? Your kids too. I used to always, when my kids would come to me, Mommy, so-and-so, what should I do? I say, well, what do you think you should do? It exercises that muscle, right? And then they become people who look for their own answers and not going outside themselves. Ask your kids their opinion, help them discover their own solutions, and even allow them to help you find yours. I would say to my kids, well, what do you think Mommy should do? Wow. But also for your employees or people on your team, ask them your opinions. And I'll tell you something else. True leaders do. They listen. They listen. They don't just pretend that they're listening. I remember, I think I've told you this story before. My cousin, Daniel Poneman, different than my son, Daniel Poneman, he was a former White House attorney and under Bill Clinton. And he told this story, and it really illustrates why Bill Clinton was so beloved by his staff. Years ago, Dan was at a Christmas party, and he asked President Clinton to sign a card for his favorite uncle, who was my father-in-law. His name was Harold, and he started telling Bill Clinton that his Uncle Harold had Alzheimer's, and how sad it was because my father-in-law was a brilliant doctor, chief of staff at Riverside Hospital in Toledo, and very well respected, and he was completely losing his faculties, and it was very sad. So Clinton signed a card. Oh, and Bill Clinton was my father-in-law's hero. So he signed the card, gave it to my cousin Dan. 2 years later, at a completely different event, and Bill Clinton had not seen my cousin Dan for 2 years, went up to him and without hesitation, Dan, how is your Uncle Harold doing? 2 years had passed, yet he remembered because he didn't just pretend to listen. He truly listened. So that's something. And by the way, one of the things that's popped into my mind, I think is an answer to your question, leaders also take 100% responsibility. I mean, if Mac, the crossing guard, didn't take 100% responsibility, would you feel safe having be the one crossing your kids in one of the busiest intersections? And also, he was the custodian at East Prairie School, and he came to our rescue if our heat went out or our class frog got out of the cage. But imagine if every time we asked Mac to come in and save the day, he blamed the weather. Well, when the weather's like this, the heat just goes off. You're just going to have to live with it. No, but the administration is tying my hands. No, he just got the job done. And it's like that in business and life, because remember, you are a leader, again, not only to your employees, coworkers, staff, but your children who are watching you and absorbing your every move because that's what they're going to be like when they grow up. And they are going to see if you make excuses, if you blame others, or if you take full responsibility. If you go from being a victim to making the commitment to no more blaming, no more excuse making, but instead be solution focused, that's what they're going to do. So instead of, how could this happen to me? What can I learn from this, and how can I transform it into a positive? And that's what leaders do. And you get to respond how you get to choose how you respond to every event. And taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming the traffic. And you just have to, I remember when Jack Canfield was talking about responsibility, and he said, you can take 99% responsibility, and then you always have a 1% out. You could always blame somebody else just at that 1%, but real leaders take 100% responsibility.
Well, I love that, again, that you're talking about leadership in all areas of life and in your community, but particularly as a parent. And that's one of the stories that's very interesting to me about following your intuition and your inner guidance. You share this story a lot about where you were with Yes to Success and about to launch a TV show and a book, but something happened. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, what happened was, so I started Yes to Success in 1980, and it became more and more and more popular. And eventually, I think it was about 1987. Yes, I was in negotiations for my own daytime TV talk show. My Yes to Success book was in the hands of actually an agent who was in conversation with several New York publishers. I had a guy in Singapore who was going to be setting up a tour of Southeast Asia. And I just have to say, in the 1980s, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't even have fax machines back then. It was all telephones and snail mail, if you could believe that. But really crazy. But what happened was that I would always teach people that the surest road to success was moving out of your head and into your heart, right? What would love do? What would your heart do? Because when you're in your head, it gets filtered through all of the lies you were told from the time you were little about not being the right gender, not being the right race, not being the right lifestyle choices, not being the right religion or whatever it is, from the right country. But the heart always sees what's good and how we can connect and how we're like each other and sees the truth. So I would always tell people when they're making decisions to move from their head physically to their heart and make their decision from that area, that heart area. So what happened to me was I got pregnant and I was just waiting to, as I say, squirt that baby out and get back to work. And the publisher was waiting and the producer was waiting and my guy in Southeast Asia was waiting. And when my baby was born, I took one look at her. And I also would tell people that, you can look at a transformational leader and we all have authenticity meters. And when I say an authenticity meter, is how you can see if people are walking their talk. So I have this baby, took one look at her, thought, new passion. I didn't want to go to the bathroom. I didn't want to leave her to go to the bathroom, let alone to go to Southeast Asia or get up every morning at 5 o'clock. So I told all those people as I moved into my heart, sorry. Actually, the guy from Southeast Asia, Leong, he remembers me calling him. He called me. He said, hey, I heard you have the baby. Let's get the tour on the books. And I said, Leong, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years. Because I decided to become a full-time mom at home. And there I did. I remained, 21 years, because then my son was born 3 years later. But if I had gone on the tour and the book and this and that, my authenticity meter would have been way over in the negative range. And I'll tell you something, Mark, and I know this about you. You're the best father. I mean, I always love to ask you about your kids because you light up more when you talk about them than anything. And your work is so important to you, and you love the people who you serve and they love you. I mean, I've never seen it. You're one of the greatest leaders because you are authentic and you do walk your talk. But when I talk about your kids, I can give you anything to talk about, but you would choose to talk about your kids, and it's really, really precious. So I forgot where I was going to go with that because I got so enthralled with thinking about you talking about your kids. Oh, I know. You will love this story, okay? And this, I don't think you've heard this before, but Sue Shalley, who is also a contributor to Soulful Leadership books, I think it was book 2,
Yep.
And one time I was giving a retreat. It was a small group of women. I was giving a retreat and my son, it was in Chicago. So my son was there and he came to lunch with us and he was having a lot of success in his career. And Sue Shelley said to him, wow, you must have all of this success because your mother probably your whole life was always quoting from Stephen Covey and Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles. And this is just a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And Daniel says, well, first of all, I've never heard those names before in my life. And she said, in teaching you all the success principles, and he said, I don't remember my mother once teaching me a success principle, but this is the greatest moment of my life, Mark. You will so relate. He said, but I think one of the reasons why I've had so much success in my life is because I watched, why I've had so much success is because I watched the way my mother and my father lived their lives. And that was like, okay, I could die now and be happy. But you know what? These kids have built in authenticity meters. See, young people, they have vision like never before. They can sense when we're not being real. On the other hand, I remember one night I was doing a call. It was a Thursday night. And my daughter was on it. And I was talking about material success and inner success. And then I just said, I love having a beautiful car and going on exotic vacations as much as anyone. The moment the words came out of my mouth in the chat, Mom, you hate exotic vacations. You think they're a waste of time. Mom. So we can no longer say one thing and be another. People today, success, leadership demands authenticity.
I love that so much. And that whole thing with your kids and the success principles and what they learn from watching you rather than, from what you've taught so many thousands of your students. I'm going to put a link down below here in the show notes about the 5 secrets to a life of true success. Tell us a little bit about that ebook and what people can expect from it.
Well, when I do these types of interviews, I always share as many principles of success as I possibly can, but I can never share everything that I teach in a half hour. And then one day I decided, you know what, I'm going to put my 5 favorite secrets to living a life of true, authentic success into an ebook. So I'm not going to tell everybody what those are, but I will tell you that I have had people think, oh, an ebook, she threw some things together. I have people like another friend of ours, Shelley Lefko, from the Lefko method. She just had to get rid of beliefs. She said, this is the first ebook that I've read over and over and over, because every time I do, I hear something else that I can implement. And it's only 39 pages and lots of pictures of my kids and me. And she said, every time I read it, I get another nugget that changes my life for the better. So, and it's not just, again, success in business and material success. I also quote from my spiritual teachers like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and I quote from my friends. And it's a life-changing book for being an ebook.
It really is. And like you said, you've taken the culmination of your teachings and really distilled it down into these key principles. And of course, leads to just so many other ways to connect with you. And got a couple other things that I'm thinking about in my head. But one is, again, we talked about the shift from getting ready to launch this book and then following that inner guidance and then going on a sabbatical for 23 years between 2 children. Then you came back. You launched your Year of Miracles with your former business secretary. Now, again, at that time, I guess she was already in the secret when she had come back out and launched your Year of Miracles. And but then it came back to launch your Yes to Success, which we did together in 2020. Yeah. And now the Awake method is a new piece of this as well. It's a way for other partners to share it. I'm all about finding other partners, and I think that this will tie into other people. So I'm just curious if you want to say something else before I ask you one final question.
Yes. Well, I've realized that I'm kind of a jack of all trades. So I do teach 4 distinct courses. I teach a communications course, how to be effective from the stage and on Zoom, and how to structure a speech and all of that. And then I have Ageless, anti-aging for your brain, body, and future. And then I taught Yes to Success for many years, which is very intrinsically spiritual, because you have to have spiritual and energetic principles in order to create success. But I realized, especially having been a meditation teacher for over 50 years, I did just pop out of my mom and become a meditation teacher, but I've been a meditation teacher since the early 1970s. But I realized that I have vast knowledge of spirituality, vast knowledge of how to connect with your higher self, vast knowledge of how to get in that flow of nature so that your life doesn't bump up against so many obstacles. And I thought, I have enough to create a 9-week course. So I started it, and it's called the Awake Method. The A, which is having awareness that you want to improve your life. The W is gaining the wisdom of how to improve your life and have your life be in the flow. And then the next A is action, because a lot of people are like, oh, let it flow. No. Have the awareness that you have the power to change your life, gain the wisdom of how to do it, take the action. And as soon as you've taken all of the action that you can take, then the K, which is knowingness, just putting it in the hands of the Creator. I've done all I can do. now I let go. I surrendered this to God and the fruits of it, as my friend Shiva would say. And if you follow those steps, then the E is enlightenment or self-realization, which I believe that people don't realize. But self-realization is not just for the monks up in the Himalayas. It's for all of us. And self-realization is just about living life in flow. So I still teach the other courses, although Yes to Success is now a lot more business oriented, how to create success in business. But I love teaching the Awake Method. So thank you for asking.
Well, you went from doing it as a seminar into, you took that same content and created it into this 8-week course. But I'm curious if you had to go back now, because that was some time ago. Things have changed a lot in our industry. If you were to go back to that girl now, in this day and age, what advice would you give to young Deborah just starting out, trying to get your message out into the world now?
You mean in 1980 when I started?
Yeah, but if 1980 was now, because we can't go back to 1980, but there are women right now who could be in your shoes, but they're afraid to get it out there. There's so much noise out there. There's so many competition.
Here's the thing. Number one, stop thinking about the competition. I mean, you have to be logical. Like, you're not going to launch your book on leadership the same day that Stephen Covey launches his new book on leadership. So you really have to do research, gain wisdom. But I think, Mark, it's something that I said earlier in the interview, and that is, you are given gifts by the Creator. It's not random. It's not random that you have a beautiful singing voice. You are given that voice because you're supposed to use it. It's not random that you have the brainwaves to be a computer genius. I certainly don't. And so it's because you're supposed to use it. So know that, and here's the thing, back to the thing about somebody writing a book on leadership. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't write a book on leadership because Stephen Covey wrote one, because there are people who are waiting to learn to hear the message from you. As I said earlier, that's their contract that they came in with. I mean, our darling Marcy Shimoff, she teaches happiness. You don't think that Sean Anker teaches happiness. I mean, I can name you 20 people, but there's your unique angle. There's unique you. People stop themselves because before they even start, they think of all the reasons why they could fail. And there is no such thing as failure. You don't think, I've had things in my life where I'm like, well, that didn't work. I just had something recently that I thought was going to be the bomb. And $25,000 later, it was not the bomb. But it's not like, oh, I'm a loser. I shouldn't even be in this field. No, that didn't work. I won't do it again. And I'll tell you something else I do. When something like that happens, I always say, glad I got that karma out of the way. Because, as you sow, so shall you reap. For every action, there is an equal opposite reaction. So there must have been some reason for that to happen. And thank you, God, that I got it out of the way by investing in something that for my business that didn't work out. Thank you, God, that I didn't get the karma back by something, as my Bible would say, God forbid, happening to my children. That's a way. And that's a lesson. And it was worth that much to learn the lesson. So what you have to do is look at things. Everything is a gift. And it is either obviously a gift or it will reveal itself as a gift. But the sooner you say, thank you, universe, thank you, spirit, and say, oh, why did it happen to me? As soon as you say, how does it get any better than this? Which I learned from Access Consciousness. How does it get any better than this about everything? The better than this will reveal itself. And that's what I would tell to that girl 45 years ago, because I was cautious and I didn't take risks unless I was sure that I wasn't going to make a mistake. I would make so many more mistakes now if I could go back. So many more.
I love that. That's the first time I heard that. I would just go back and make so many more mistakes. I love it. Deborah, I am so grateful for our friendship and being on this journey with you. I know you've touched thousands of lives and have so many more to go. Thank you for taking this time with me today. Is there any last word you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I'll say one more thing, and that is if you want to be a great leader, again, not only ask questions, but understand what your people want and why, and then always let them know. And I get better at this every day. I was just going to say I haven't been that good, but it doesn't matter. That's another principle of success. Doesn't matter what you did in the past. Let's just go forward. Let today be a watershed moment, and let the people who are in your community or who work for you or your children, let them know you are committed to their success. You won't do it for them, but you will meet them in the middle and walk the path with them.
Beautiful. Deborah Poneman, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for everything you are and everything you do. You are one of the greatest people on the planet, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Our dear friend Alan Davidson is coming through to say a message to you and everyone listening. Keep shining like 10,000 suns. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leading with Purpose. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to lead with purpose and make a meaningful impact. If you're ready to discover where you stand on your leadership journey, I invite you to take the Soulful Leadership Assessment. It's a powerful tool to help you align with your leadership style and your true purpose.